What is up, guys? Welcome back to Life on Earth. Hope you guys are doing well today. Roger Federer is arguably one of the best tennis players, if not one of the best athletes to ever live. What he does on the court is absolutely phenomenal, and of course he has a very close relationship with one of our favorite watch brands. I think everyone knows. He has a very close relationship with Rolex, and so I thought we would go over some of the watches that have been seen on his wrist. The majority of them, or all of them, are going to be Rolex. And yeah, that's what we're going to be discussing today. But before we get into that, if you are new to the channel, be sure to hit that subscribe button if you like these types of videos. Also, if you wouldn't mind smashing that like button for us, it really does help us out. So like I said, Rolex and Federer have had a relationship for basically almost his entire career. I think they partnered back in 2006, and he's obviously been seen to wear a lot of Rolex watches. And so I'm going to go over just a couple of the watches that he's seen. I think at this point he really has worn every single type of Rolex watch that you can probably imagine. And there are pictures out there of his wrists and him wearing all these different watches. So I'm going to go over a couple of them that he's been seen wearing. The first one, and this is one that he's worn quite a few times throughout his tennis career, and that is the Rolex GMT-Master II, the Batman version. This is the watch that it's a Rolex GMT watch. It's got a blue and black bezel, which is why it's nicknamed the Batman. It's a really beautiful watch. I think the bezel really is obviously the big point when it comes to this watch. And it's got, obviously, the GMT hand matches that blue, which is on the bottom of the watch. I think most recently he was seen wearing this watch at the Australian Open final in 2017. At least that's the picture that I'm going to be using. A big shout out to perfecttennis.com for their list of watches that he's worn, by the way. That's kind of what I'm following here. It's a really beautiful watch. I think Federer wears it really nicely, and obviously, like, being that it's one of the most sought after watches in the Rolex line, it's obviously going to be one that people are going to enjoy. Moving over just to something that we're a little bit more interested in, which is actually the vintage side of watches. He's been seen to wear a lot of vintage Rolex watches. There have been some pictures of him wearing Rolex Submariner vintage Rolex Submariners, but he was also seen to wearing a vintage Rolex Daytona reference 6263. This is the non-Paul Newman version. So if you don't know about vintage Rolex, there's something that's called the Paul Newman dial. The Paul Newman dial, essentially, on the little sub-dials on the Daytona, there are little squares at each of the accents on the sub-dials, and that's how you kind of constitute as a Paul Newman dial. This is a non-Paul Newman dial, but a really simple watch, black dial, black bezel with white sub-dials, Daytona written in red on that 6 o'clock sub-dial. It's a really, really beautiful watch. What's interesting is this isn't a modern watch, which I think is more what individuals who are in partnership with a watch brand would be wearing. They'd be wearing the modern line because that's what watch companies want to end up selling. But he was wearing a vintage Daytona, which I think shows that he actually does maybe know a little bit more about watches, and so is going to be a little bit more exploratory when it comes to the different types of watches that he wears. Another watch that he has been seen wearing is the very, very iconic watch with his relationship with Wimbledon and Rolex, and that is the Rolex Datejust. This is the two-tone version. This is the I believe it's stainless steel. It's a stainless steel case with a gold smooth bezel, which I really, really love on Datejust. I think it's a much nicer feel to the watch. Then it has this really beautiful slate gray dial and these green accented Roman numerals for the hour markers. This is like, when I see this watch, all I think about is Wimbledon, because it has the colors for the green tennis courts. Obviously, there's so many advertisements with this watch in it for Wimbledon as well as Rolex during that time. And so this is something that he's been seen wearing multiple times in multiple different Grand Slam finals that he's won, but also on, like I said, advertisements that he's done with Rolex. This is a 41mm case, so it's a little bit larger, but I just absolutely love the feel to this watch. If I'm completely honest, I think this is one of the best Datejusts that you can buy if you're looking at buying a new Datejust. And I think it really, for me, comes down to that smooth bezel. I think it gives it a little bit of a softness, a little bit more understated than the fluted bezel, which obviously shimmers quite a bit. So a really beautiful watch. The next watch, and we're kind of basically just going through Rolex's line right now, but he was also seen wearing the Rolex Datejust, which is nicknamed the President. This one, this is the diamond and ruby Everose version. It's the reference 218235. This he was seen wearing at the 2012 Wimbledon final. And I mean, if you wanted a statement piece, I think this really does it. You can see on the dial of this watch, you've got these sapphires, and then on the 6 and at 9 o'clock, you see these really beautiful rubies. Black dial. I think it's a pink. It looks like it's pink gold. Let me make sure. Or I guess they call it Everose gold. And I think the hue of that gold and the color of the rubies really mesh really nicely together. Like I said, this is a statement piece, 41mm. It's definitely going to be in your face, but a really cool watch. He's also been seen wearing a Sky Dweller, the reference 326934, stainless steel case. White gold case with a dark gray, like really dark gray dial. We've actually seen like wrist shots of this watch on his wrist, which is kind of cool. 42mm. Sky Dweller really isn't my favorite watch. It's just kind of another one of Rolex's watches. I mean, the list goes on. I mean, he's been seen wearing a Datejust with it's the reference 116334. This is the silver blue Arabic reference. I mean, you know, it just keeps going. Stainless steel case, 41mm, fluted bezel. I prefer the smooth bezel on the previous Datejust we mentioned, but nevertheless a really beautiful watch. And the numbers kind of are so light blue, it almost looks like it's purple, which I think is cool. He's been seen wearing Yachtmasters, Yachtmaster 2 reference 116689. This is another watch that he's worn in many of the finals that he's participated in. The list really goes on, and he's been seen wearing, I mean, all kinds, everything from like the Cellini moon phase to other Daytonas. He's been seen wearing Milgaus's and 50th anniversary of the Rolex Presidential. The list just keeps going on and on. I think one thing that has, you know, with his watch, the watches that we've seen on his wrist, I think it definitely shows that he has a partnership with Rolex and adheres to it. You know, he wears the watches, and obviously that's something that people notice on someone like Roger Federer's wrist. He wears Rolex watches. Maybe I should try and get a Rolex. I think from an advertising perspective, Rolex has done a really great job and chosen a really great candidate for these watches. I don't think that his choices are blind. I don't think Rolex is saying, here's another watch that you need to wear. I think he actually does put a little bit of time and effort into deciding which Rolex to actually wear. I think the fact that we've seen him wearing vintage watches like the 6263 and some of the other vintage Submariners, like I think that actually puts things into perspective, and I think that shows that he puts a little time and effort into thinking about which watch he wants to wear. So a cool collection. I mean, basically take Rolex's lineup over the last 20 years, he probably has every single one of those watches, you know, good, deservedly, he's one of the greatest athletes to ever live, in my opinion, and has some really great watches that he's able to wear. And obviously his wife has been seen wearing Rolex watches, and I'm sure his kids will eventually start wearing them. So it'll continue. You know, what do you expect? But it's great to see a partnership like this, because I think it really, these Roger and Rolex are almost like the same thing, and it's nice to see when a brand and a person really match each other's personality, and it's great to see some cool watches on these athletes. I hope you guys enjoyed me going over some of the watches that have been seen on Roger Federer's wrist. I really could make a sequel to this and speak to some of the other watches that have been seen on his wrist. A big shout out to perfecttennis.com for compiling this list. It's a really cool collection of watches, and I enjoyed looking at them with you guys. If you are new to the channel, be sure to hit that subscribe button if you like these types of videos. Also, if you didn't do it at the beginning of this video, be sure to smash the like button for us for Roger Federer's collection of Rolex watches. And with that said, guys, I hope you enjoyed this video, and until next time.